Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. In this video, we're going to be talking about M3GAN. Let's get into it. M3GAN is a 2022 film starring Allison Williams and is directed by Gerard Johnstone. M3GAN is a marvel of artificial intelligence, a lifelike doll that's programmed to be a child's greatest companion and a parent's greatest ally. Designed by Gemma, a brilliant roboticist, M3GAN can listen, watch, and learn as it plays the role of friend, teacher, playmate, and protector. When Gemma becomes the unexpected caretaker of her 8-year-old niece, she decides to give the girl a M3GAN prototype, a decision that leads to unimaginable consequences. So in 2019, MGM gave us the Child's Play reboot, and it tells the story of an AI doll built to be a child's companion and is also designed to be protective over that child. And, of course, Chucky took that to the extreme in that film. Well, here we are a few years later in 2022, and Universal said, hold my beer. This film tells almost the exact same story, just tells it with some slight variations. And many of the changes, I would say, are actually improvements over Child's Play. Despite me actually liking that movie more than a lot of other people, I still believe this movie probably told the better version of that story, which I guess is going to be my first major positive of this film. This doll is also meaner, whereas Chucky was a much more sympathetic character in that movie. M3GAN is 100% villain. This chick is bad to the metallic bone. Dad joke. Also, I'm sorry about all the comparisons to the Child's Play reboot, but it's kind of hard not to whenever it's the exact same template. But this doll is also scarier than Chucky because aside from her technological advantages over our protagonist, she also has a clear physical advantage. You can't just grab this doll and toss it across the room. Nope. She is far superior mentally and physically than everybody else in this film, which seems like a weird design choice. Why would you make a doll that is designed to be a child's companion that literally has the strength to rip that child's arm off if it goes haywire at any point? Seems strange, but I'll try not to overthink that or I'll end up in a rabbit hole. I also think this movie has very well-placed humor. It's not just a laugh-out-loud fest from start to finish, but there are some genuinely funny scenes and character moments in this movie. And none of it felt overly forced or campy, and there were several times when the entire theater I was with actually erupted into laughter because of just how well executed some of the humor in this film was. And I'm not sure if anybody else caught this or if this was just in my head, but I felt like there were some clear callbacks to The Ring in the way that M3GAN moves. Like when she starts moving fast and running, she does this little crawl thing that just gives me serious Ring vibes. And it's actually quite spooky. In fact, another thing I have to give props to this movie for is it really knew how to use its PG-13 rating to its utmost potential. It took advantage of the use of lighting and the environment to create tension and atmosphere with our villain of the movie. I was actually really impressed with everything, and that's one thing I was kind of nervous about going into. I have seen some very scary PG-13 horror movies. Like, two great examples that come to mind are Poltergeist and Insidious. But unfortunately, not all, in fact, most PG-13 movies fail, because usually the filmmakers don't know how to use all the resources that they have at their disposal when making a PG-13 horror movie. They don't create a scary villain. They don't understand how to use the environment to their advantage to build atmosphere and tension and scare the audience. And essentially what we're left with is a soulless, bland, cookie-cutter movie with poor acting and a bunch of cutaway kills. And despite this movie using a lot of cutaway kills, which I will get into more in my negatives, there were a couple of pretty solid kills, especially considering it is a PG-13 movie. There's one in particular involving a little boy who is a bully to the main little girl of this film. And honestly, this one scene alone had me questioning how this movie even got approved for a PG-13 rating. It was actually pretty brutal. Which, there were a couple of scenes like that in this movie. Like, you could tell they were pushing that PG-13 rating as far as they possibly could. If the line between PG-13 and R was an actual line, then they were tap dancing on it. They wanted to get as much out of that rating as humanly possible without having to go up to an R, so they could get as much box office potential as possible. And honestly, I don't even blame them. I mean, at the end of the day, we have to remember it is a business and they're in it to make money. And my final noteworthy positive for this movie is Allison Williams herself. She plays the role of the little girl's aunt. I don't want to say too much about the specifics of her character in any real detail because I know there's a lot of people that still haven't seen this movie and I don't want to spoil it for them, but she was actually one of the better aspects of this movie. And I even enjoyed the little character arc she goes on in this movie. It's nothing too deep. Just a very subtle character transformation throughout the film. And the only other thing I've even ever seen her in is the movie Get Out, which I really enjoyed her in that film too. So far she's 2 for 2 with me. I don't think there's any individual standout moments with her character in this film, but just her performance as a whole was solid. I actually wouldn't mind seeing her go on to do more with her horror career. I think she has a lot of potential. But as usual, very few movies are perfect and without flaw, and this movie is no exception. There's nothing too egregious that just completely took me out of this movie, and I did have a good time with it overall, but this is a film review, so in order for my subjective opinion to be as objective as possible, I have to give you guys the negatives as seen through my eyes. So let's get into them. And the first one is kind of two, but it's really just two different symptoms of the same problem. The first one is the cutaway problem that most PG-13 films have. And while it didn't personally bother me, I have to remind myself that I don't speak for every moviegoer out there, and the reality is there are a bunch of horror fans who go to see these movies for the carnage candy. Like I said, there are a couple of cool kills, but the majority are cutaway kills. So if you're a gore hound, then this movie may be partially or even a complete disappointment for you. But nobody knows your own likes and dislikes better than you, so just be mindful of that when you go in to see this movie. And honestly, my advice to anybody who is a gore hound and going to see this movie, temper your expectations. You're choosing to knowingly go watch a PG-13 horror movie, and obviously a PG-13 rating is going to put limitations on the contents in the movie. That's pretty obvious. So if you walk out of this movie disappointed by the lack of gore, that's kind of your own fault. Just saying. But the other thing is you could tell they really wanted an R rating for this movie. I haven't read up on any of the behind the scenes information of this movie, so I don't know if this is actually true or not, but this movie has studio interference written all over it. It felt like one of those situations where the director wanted one thing and the studio seen dollar signs and wanted another. And it's quite jarring in some scenes, honestly, because it looks like a lot of the actual horror scenes got chopped down to get that PG-13 rating. It didn't ruin it for me, but as I said, it was jarring at times and it is something I did notice, so I'm throwing it in here. And my last negative is the little girl who is our main protagonist of the movie. At first, I thought she was doing a pretty good job, but as the movie chugged along, I became more annoyed with her performance. She was kind of one note through most of the movie, and then when she does mix it up, she becomes an annoying and insufferable little kid who has absolutely no respect for anyone or anything in this film except for the doll. Even to the point where she straight up slaps one of the adults in this movie. Maybe that's a nitpick, but I found myself being more annoyed with her character than entertained, and that's definitely a negative for me considering this is the main character you're supposed to be following along with and having sympathy for throughout this movie because of her circumstances in the film. But that's hard to do when she's being rude and disrespectful to literally every single person on screen. Thankfully, we had plenty of other good characters to balance everything out. But like I said, guys, overall, I really enjoyed this movie, and for a rating, I'm going to give it an 8.5. But anyways, that's it for this video, guys. What did you think of M3GAN? Did you agree with anything I said? Did you disagree with anything I said? Let me know down in the comments section or find me on one of my socials, which are linked in the video descriptions of all my videos, and we can discuss it. In the meantime, go ahead and like and share this video. If you haven't already, please subscribe, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.